Hello YouTube, it's Ian here with Hobbies of Man once again, and today we're going to be doing another manga review. Today we're going to be looking at Blue Lock, and I already did a Blue Lock first impressions review, but this is going to be a review of the first arc of Blue Lock, which is still only the first volume, because the first volume of Blue Lock, all 4 chapters of it, are all the first arc of Blue Lock. Now, I can't remember the name of the arc, but it's basically the introduction arc. I'm pretty sure that's actually what it's called as well. But Blue Lock is written by Muneyuki Kaneshiro, and it's illustrated by Yusuke Nomura. So Muneyuki Kaneshiro actually also did a few other series that are relatively popular outside of the US. One of them actually is popular here in the US, but it's not published by anyone, that being Yagan. There's another series called Grassroots, which is a 5-volume series that is published in Spain. That's really, really good. It's about this Neanderthal kind of kid. I think he's a Cro-Magnon actually, but you know, same thing. He's a Stone Age guy, and he fights mammoths, which is really, really cool. And of course, Yagan is kind of like Gantz, but also kind of like you know, your average demon hunting series. And then there's a few other series that he's done, but I don't really know too much about them because I haven't read them yet. So yeah, Yusuke Nomura, I'm pretty sure I've heard that name before, and I thought it was associated with Kaneshiro, but I'm not exactly sure in what it was. So it's published by Kodansha. The graphic is shonen, and the genres here are sports, specifically soccer, thriller, and you could also call it kind of a death game, because it's more or less what it is. It's just that no one actually dies, but it is that kind of harsh live or die kind of competition. So it's really, really interesting. And in terms of an adaptation, it doesn't have one yet. It's going to come out sometime in October, which is really exciting. Hopefully we get it out in English at the same time as Japan. If not, hopefully it doesn't get stuck in Netflix jail forever, because I would really enjoy watching it. I think it'll be really, really cool. In terms of the premise here, it's that Japan needs a striker really, really bad, because people in the Japanese Soccer Association have decided that if Japan is going to ever evolve their soccer playing capabilities, they need a striker. They can't win on defense and midfielders alone. You know, so they get this guy called Junichi Ego, I think is his name, or Junicho, or Junicho, something like that. Ego, his last name's Ego, or his first name, I'm not sure. I always get confused with the order of Japanese names. But this guy Ego, they get him to create this program called the Blue Lock program, which is where he gets 300 players, and he sticks them into this death game scenario where they don't actually die, but their Japanese soccer careers are completely derailed if they lose, right? So the point of this is to elevate the soccer competition between these kids, you know, artificially, by forcing them into this death game situation and into this thriller situation. What he's doing is creating really hyper focused soccer players and elevating the soccer game in that place, because there's this idea that strikers appear where soccer game is the hottest, right? So it's really, really interesting. And eventually one of these kids is going to be Japan's new striker. And with that striker, they're going to manage to get to winning the World Cup, because that is the end goal. And it's a really, really interesting premise. It's really cool. There's a few kind of issues with it. For one, this manga really emphasizes the idea that teamwork doesn't really matter. What matters ultimately is that you are capable as an individual and that you are better than everyone else, right? Because the striker mentality is that you chase goals down no matter what. Now, of course, this actually is kind of true. Like Chicharito Hernandez, the best Mexican soccer player, or the person in Mexico that has the best score for the national team, he has the highest record of goals scored for Mexico. He basically just ran into the soccer game to find the soccer ball and kick it into the goal. So I can understand that. You know, you could say that Messi plays like that, Pele plays like that, Ronaldo plays like that for sure, Neymar, all of these characters, all of these people are definitely very much embodiments of that idea. But at the end of the day, those people also play with their team as a team, and they understand that they need each other, right? So a lot of characters actually end up understanding this early on, and this, you know, fight between what they know in that sense that, you know, they should be working as a team, directly clash with their desire to be strikers, which means that they have to put their ego, you know, above everything else. And it's a really interesting premise because of that. So I didn't really jive with it initially, but I really got into it. But that's enough about the premise. This is basically a more in-depth version of my first impressions review. So let me actually get into the plot line and, talking more in depth and a little bit more spoilery about the plot line here. So volume 1 is the introduction arc, and it opens up the premise. And then Igo Jinpachi is his name, sets up the Blue Lock program, gets 300 of Japan's best teen strikers, and then we follow this guy called Yoichi Inagi, who I'm guessing is going to eventually be the striker because he's the main character for the book, unless something happens and we switch main characters, which I very much doubt. But he deals with the last game of the season. He loses, and then he gets called into the Blue Lock program, and we get to see the first 3 days of their life in the Blue Lock program. He gets put into a dorm with 11 other kids, and then immediately they have to have this battle, this tag game, where the last person to get tagged, the person that has the ball with them at the end of the timer, is the loser. And what happens is that the loser ends up being Japan's #1 teen striker. And so it's really, really insane, right? Or at least who Inagi thinks is the best striker. And this guy loses because he was trying to be very morally fair and square about things, right? He didn't put his ego before everyone else, and so he lost. And this really, affects Inagi a lot. And then we get the development of the Blue Lock program, the first 3 days of the Blue Lock program, which is basically just insane drills, and Inagi trying to figure out what the hell is going on and what he's going to do, and if he even wants to be there. And the way that he kind of gets around to doing that is by talking to this guy called Bachira, who happens to be the reason why Inagi gets to stay and the other guy had to leave. And it's because he sensed that Inagi also had a monster within him, which is a really interesting concept because it adds an element of fantasy, of dramatization to this really interesting, mostly realistic soccer game kind of a story, which is really, really cool. I like that a lot. And then they get through this whole thing and they end up at the beginning of the selection process, the first selection process. So it's really, really interesting. I liked it a lot. I thought it was really, really cool. And I really enjoyed this first arc. It was really, really exciting, actually. And the second arc even gets more exciting. I read all 3 volumes that I had digitally in one go. So I already know what happens into the next arc. But it's really, really good stuff. In terms of characters, there's a lot of them. There's too many characters, actually. I really don't know too many of the characters just yet. But for this arc, I would say the most important ones are obviously Yoichi Inagi, or Isagi. I can't remember his name. I think it's Inagi. It might be Isagi. I'm not sure. I can't remember. But this guy, he's the main character. He's, of course, the most important one because he's the main character. And he is also the one that has a lot of development to go for because he, loses his last opportunity as a middle schooler because he decided to put the team over himself. And so this situation, coupled with the fact that Jinpachi is telling him that he needs ego more than he needs teamwork, is a really interesting kind of situation. Does he grow into that idea? Does he reject it? What is he going to do? And it's really, really interesting how that works, right? Then Bachira, of course, is the second most important character because he is the one that manages to get Yoichi into a thought process, which is really, really good. And we have this other guy called Raichi, and if I remember correctly, Raichi is is one of the other guys in their team, which is Team Z because they're the lowest ranked. And this guy, I'm pretty sure, is the one that happens to also help them out because he is not as confrontational as everyone else, and he also has a bit of a fair play kind of mentality. I'm not exactly sure if that's actually him or not. I kind of got them confused in my mind, but I'm pretty sure that Raichi is that guy. He's also very tall. And then we have Henri Teieri and Jinpachi Igo, who are the 2 Japanese Soccer Federation people that are around. So Henri is actually the first character we meet in the first arc, and she is actually a brand new hire for the Japanese Soccer Association. And she goes in there and she's like, we got to win, man. We got to do something to make Japan better at soccer. It's not enough to, settle for barely qualifying anymore. And so she kind of gets the ball rolling. She gets Igo to come in and develop the program, and it's really, really interesting. She also happens to be basically the fan service character. I can't remember which volume it is, but one of the volumes actually starts with her in like a fan service pose. It's not anything like really racy, but you know, it's that kind of classic like hot girl in a soccer jersey kind of thing. And I quite liked it. I actually was thinking about that because, you know, usually really popular things, even if they're mostly serious, at least in Japan, like the Japanese anime kind of things, also happen to have a lot of fan service. And this story basically only has guys, and so a lot of fan service might be difficult. It's kind of like Haikyuu, like there really isn't any male fan service, like male oriented fan service. So most of it ends up being like Fujo bait, right? But Henri is also there, also probably for the fan service aspect, but also because it's interesting to have a woman push the male soccer team, right? So I think it's interesting. I don't really care if she's a fan service character or not. I just found it interesting to mention. And yeah, Jinpachi Ego is probably the most interesting character, and I quite like him a lot. In terms of world building, there's actually none because there's no fantasy elements yet. I'm pretty sure there are going to be some at one point. I've seen some spreads from the manga or later on, and there's like these imaginary animals that kind of occur, right? These like metaphorical representations of the characters that are like a snake and a lion and stuff like that. So I understand that there's probably going to be some relative elements of fantasy here, but they're mostly just going to be for the sake of dramatization, right? It's kind of like how in Saint Seiya, you know, when they are like battling, you know, there's these awesome crazy animations for all of their punches, and it's kind of that kind of idea, right? So yeah, but there's a lot of good setting building. They develop how the Bootleg program works. They develop the building that they're in. They also explain everything about where they're training and how they're training and stuff like that. So there's a lot of setting building. It's just not world building in the kind of fantasy sense, right? But it's still really good. There's a lot of stuff explained. Although there really isn't too much of an explanation for soccer. Not like there is in Haikyuu, but I'm guessing that's because the authors probably thought that if you liked that if you were reading this, you probably already knew about soccer, or thought that it wasn't necessary to explain soccer because it's a pretty simple game. You know, you have people running, and you have people that want to shoot the ball into the giant net, right? So it makes sense. It's not that difficult to understand. Even though there's probably a lot of rules for soccer, it's probably a lot less than like volleyball or basketball or, you know, football, right? So it makes sense that they would do this. In terms of the artwork, I think that's really the second best thing. Like, I really enjoy the premise. The art style is awesome. It's really, really great. I don't care too much about the characters yet, but the art style is just awesome. The way that the characters have expressions on their faces sometimes, the way Yoichi kind of just like changes into this like demon kind of character when he has like a moment of like ego is really, really interesting. And there's these kind of like shadowy kind of things that happen around the character sometimes when they're doing something, and it's really, really cool. There's just a lot of style here, and the characters all look really, really exciting. So I really like the art style here. Like I said, I do think that there should be a little bit more female characters, but within the context of the story, it doesn't make sense for them to be there. So it's just me wanting more female characters because I think they're interesting, but it's just what it is. In this first volume, there is technically no fan service, although, you know, a lot of people say that Henri is really hot at the beginning of the story, but, you know, she actually isn't shown off to be, like, in a fan service-y pose. The only fan service-y thing that happens, I think, is, like, what I mentioned earlier in the beginning of Volume 2, I think, which is, you know, not really that big of a deal. If you're 12, you probably will find it really exciting, but otherwise, it's going to be pretty average, right? It's just going to be a hot girl wearing a t-shirt. And yeah, so no fan service here yet. In terms of rating, this is a 5 out of 5. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was super cool. I was actually not expecting it to be that awesome because usually when there's a lot of hype around series, they tend to be disappointing. Case in point is Chainsaw Man. It's really not that good. It's not that bad. It's just not that great. But, you know, I actually really found this to be really compelling. So I'm very happy that I read it. And, yeah, thank you. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below. You know, do all of that stuff. And thank you guys very much for watching. See you guys later.